Joe Greene, how's it going?
It's going good, Gordy. Good to see you, man. Are you
Really,
well?
really good. Really, really good to see you. People don't believe how good it
Still
is.
here. Still here.
We're really good talking to you tonight. The wonders of technology. So, with a couple of technical difficulties there, so we got
Yeah,
there again.
yeah.
Yeah.
I'm so accomplished at technology.
So am I.
I'm well known for my technology. We got it. We're here.
Yeah, that's it. Look, just want to give Joe a wee introduction here. Joe's one of those sort of grown up legendary figures, even though he's only a couple of years older than you. You know, he Joe never followed the crowd. Joe, we played football on three stones and went to school. That was probably about
Remember
it.
those?
But Joe followed his own path. He always had the style. He always had the mod gear before we knew what mods were. He had the ska gear before we knew what ska was, and and like he always had the style. He always had the music, and the taste in music. And do you know what? He maybe got a bit of. We grew up in Pinebank, Craigavon, and he maybe at times got a bit of a rough time because of that. But we then grew to know that Joe was a pretty cool dude, and going further into, when we started hitting our teens and stuff, Joe would have been the DJ in the cellar when it was indie, best indie club in Ireland, Northern Ireland, the north of Ireland, whatever you want to call it, right? Armagh, right? It was the best, and it was people came from all over to go to the cellar to hear the indie sounds, and I was kind of draw a bit of a parallel when we were talking to you earlier. Drew a wee bit of a parallel to myself, maybe ending up interviewing some of these Gaelic footballers that I would have viewed as legends and heroes, and and stuff like that. That I watched them play. I got to interview them. Well, Joe got to play live on stage and backing some of his heroes and influences growing up. He got to play with bands like Jesus and Mary Chain, the Charlatans, and people like that. And maybe at times people was wondering what was Joe at. Well, Joe got there in the end, and he got playing with all these guys and friends with these guys, and we'll talk a wee bit more. So that's the big intro over, Joe, and just want to ask you, what first got you into music?
I'd say the first music that was mine was ska. We were about 9 when the specials started coming out, and Madness first singles and stuff like that. And I always remember me and Paul O'Neill standing in his mum's dining room dancing to Gangsters in 1979, and it was an epiphany. It was just like, what is this? And that was like the first thing. It was mine. I listened to records of my mum and dad's and stuff like that, and I loved the Beatles and Motown and stuff like that. But this was mine. And there's those sort of things. But for me, it was the two-tone revival, and then it led on to like listening to Northern Soul and getting into mod music and things like that. But our two-tone was my first, still my big love.
Well, it's funny you say it. Like before the old Fred Perry there, Joe, in your honor tonight.
Yes, still representing.
Yeah,
I still have a pair of tassel loafers, like so.
a pair of what?
Pair of like tassel fringe loafers that I occasionally bust out up the stairs. Like.
Yeah,
I've actually that whole thing. I got lucky enough to DJ before Beat a few times, and the DJ of the Selector and Bad Manners and stuff like that. So these were real big things for me. I hung out with Rankin Roger, and I was just like, I was 12 and going like, wow, and he was so nice, he was so lovely. Like, you're just like, Rankin Roger, it was great. Like,
brilliant. No, I know, on all those bands, like my brother would have been friendlier with you than me, but the big brother Harry, and Terry would have been, in your gang, and sticky hockey and fellas like
Yep.
that there, and the mods and the scars, and like we were a few
We
years
used,
in.
we used to dance in your mum's dining room on a Saturday afternoon as well. I
Yeah,
remember having little dance parties. We used to have them in each other's houses.
yeah,
And I remember you just giggling at us, me and your Terry and all dancing to like,
yeah,
whatever nonsense we were listening to. Like, it was a really lovely wee thing, because we had to share records
yeah.
and you'd go to somebody's house. It was a lovely little community way to grow up, like.
Our Terry nearly killed me one time. My uncle had met Jack Burns on the plane coming home from England, and Jack Burns has stiff little fingers, and Jack gave him an album, signed album to the lads, right? And to the lads, Terry, Dara, and Gordon. And so it was a third main, Joe. I mean, Jack Burns said it was a third main, right? But Terry,
I can see how this is going with you
right?
boys. I can see where this is going.
Terry,
Go on.
Terry swapped the third main album, and I listened to it. And as soon as I listened to it, as you say about an epiphany, the
Yeah,
stuff little fingers on. I remember the old record player, bang, whoa, head
yeah.
blown away. You know what I mean? And
Isn't it mad? Just thinking about it, how important, especially at that age, you're like whatever age, you're discovering so many things, and that rush that you get, just it opens just all these avenues, and
yeah.
opens all these gates in your mind, like.
So I suppose as I probably would have been 6 or 7, and all bang, inflammable material, bang. It's like, whoa,
Yeah,
this is what is
yeah.
this? Should I even be listening to this? Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
so,
it's so exciting, like, and it's
aye,
so
aye,
full of just momentum, like.
yeah, but
Uh, I
but
still get that. I still get that about music, like.
Terry had played this album and played whatever, played, but they became more into, as you say, ska. Just when you mentioned the bad manners, the specials, the beat, madness, etc. So Terry
Yeah.
swapped this, went down to Smithfield and swapped this LP for 6 or 7, signed LP. It was third main, was signed to the lads, and I
Oh
was,
no!
yeah. So
Oh
he swapped it.
no!
I think he got 6 or 7 singles, bad manners, madness, etc. So a couple of years later,
Mm, rash decisions, Gordy.
a couple of years later, I think I sold those singles.
Um, I don't like to think about those things that especially DJing for years.
Yeah,
The amount of stuff I've lost and left at my home, you know what I mean? It's frightening, and like really stuff I really loved and cared about, like,
yeah.
and my
I
own
hope I
slots
hope
and
Terry
joys.
doesn't watch this interview though, Joe. That's what I'm saying. Like he chased me around Pine Bank for about 2 days. I left home over it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. I can see how that would rankle, Gordy, I can see how assigned.
Why did he not understand that a third of that album was made?
Yeah, it's 33 and a third. It's perfectly, it's all about the threes.
But I don't think he got a third of the money. I think maybe it was that. Do
No,
you know what I mean? Maybe it
no,
was.
it never works out that way in music.
So that was the crack with that one. But I say, look, even just those singles, obviously I played them, and then you went on to work with those guys, and again, people sort of just these are just interviews and I've been doing. People seem to judge success in terms of fame or monetary success or whatever. It's not always the way, and particularly in music, success is working with those guys and mixing with those guys and producing your own stuff, which you are obviously with Documenta and within the industry and within, with those guys, you're considered an equal. You're playing with them and they play your records and been on your records. And you mentioned that Holmes fella. You've worked with him as well.
Yeah, David's an old friend. It's strange. We've known each other sort of secondhand since we were like 12 and 15. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And I got to know him over the years and stuff, and I've been a massive fan of it. I still have his first 12-inch and stuff like that, and I used to go to his clubs in the early 80s. Me and Sticky and a couple other of us, we would scoot down to Belfast when we were like 13. 13, 14, we would go down to this all-day club, and Homer was the DJ at it. He actually DJ'd the first show I ever went to, which was like a mod band called The Prisoners, again, 1983 maybe. And we were children, like, so getting to work with David and him sort of like thinking, I really like your songs and stuff like that, really meant an awful lot to me. Like, just personally, it was like, whoa, it's ambition's a strange thing. For me, it's just, doing things, creating and getting to work with people who just teach you. You can't really learn these things. It's weird. It's fun. It's wonderful. Like, when we started playing together as kids, we're 14 or 15 in Lurgan, like, it's just for fun. You want to do this not for any fame or fortune. It's the best feeling, like, just playing music together. Like, these are other things that you obviously aspire to at some point, but that rush of playing and then getting to work with people whose music you absolutely adore and you respect and admire them as artists, it's very fulfilling.
Yep, and it's look, you created a bit of a scene in Lurgan, Joe, whether you probably like it or not, or
I like to think I like to think a bunch of us, wasn't me, it was a bunch of people, like a whole bunch of people, and that was it was strange because it was and you'll agree with me on this here, it was a really safe place at a time when it wasn't particularly safe, but that place was safe. And I mean, outside of like the prevailing troubles of the time, like, the sectarian civil war and what have you, I mean, just you're a bit strange, you're a bit awkward, well, I'll go here, nobody's going to care, and it was very welcoming and friendly place. I never saw any bad vibes in the years that we were in the cellar. Like, it was really welcoming. Nobody felt sort of threatened, and I thought that was brilliant. And that was everybody involved in it, all the people that came. I was as much they're doing,
Put like this, I don't think I can recall a scrap in it. I really can't.
I unfortunately do, but it was before I was DJing there.
Aye. Before you chilled it all out, Joe. Before you chilled it all out.
Yeah, it was just like, there's no need for all that. That can happen elsewhere.
Yeah, but I can remember you
saying here's some weirdo music just to make it even worse.
The hell's that? I mean, how you meant to fight with that? I
know.
How you meant to fight with the Velvet Underground? Like, it's not.
I mean, the idea of it was like you could go to other places and listen to chart music, but there was like, me and my friends all lived over in London in the late 80s and early 90s. And we had been going to indie clubs, which didn't exist before in London. And we were just like, this is all our favorite music. They're playing the Velvet Underground in a nightclub. And this was never really happened to any extent. We were kind of lucky with the whole idea of, punk going into the overground, Nirvana, even Guns N' Roses. I remember coming home to Lurgan and kids were wearing Guns N' Roses t-shirts, and it was such an anti-conformity thing that even that was like, we 13-year-old kids and, going full metal. Like, I thought this is brilliant. So everybody got into a bit more accepting into, stranger music and stranger attitudes.
Yeah. and even there, and but this that indie scene and that like people would say, people there's probably been documentaries made about the punk scene and how it became kind of the only kind of one of the very few cross community things, and people going down to Belfast to congregate and stuff, and uh, swap clothes and you know
Swap records,
swap and all
you
that
know.
other sort of stuff, and say the indie scene kind of replicated that just a few years later, you know what I mean, and
Yeah,
it was a great thing, and but as well as that, there's a lot of that kind of group of friends that are still musicians. There's Mark McConville in Galway
yeah.
still working away as a musician, and but aside of that as well, then there's a lot of people who have become successful artists, film directors, and
Yeah.
stuff like that from that small kind of place.
There,
You know what I mean?
there is, I mean, I guess it was a bunch of people who were, uh, there was nowhere else to go. There was folks that came from as far as well, Newry or Katy or Armagh, Portadown, Lisburn, direction. So there was just nowhere else to go. And that's when you start meeting up with people and you find that you're not alone as a weirdo, because you like this strange music. Uh, then you build these connections because in punk rock, and especially in American hardcore, which was a real big thing with all of us in the late 80s, it wasn't just one type of music. We liked a lot of different things. And American hardcore was very, you slept on people's floors, you helped everyone out. And in the North during that time, everybody sort of did that in their own small little communities because it was quite difficult. You couldn't really travel too easily, things like this here, playing shows about the place to do that. It was like that had started to happen, but it was very small and nascent. Um, but it's making those connections with people, and you end up meeting great musicians and friends that forever,
But and even there, it's funny you say about the weirdness and so on, and there's it's a new thing. It's seen as a new thing now to embrace your weirdness and
yeah,
you
yeah.
know what I mean, and all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
And
And there was weirdos before us as well.
yeah, well, I know, but it's
I know
important
some
that
of them.
it's important that there's some weirdos to keep the tradition going. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah, I think it's very important.
for example, like probably it's almost next generation. The end of that would be Melodian, Stevie, Melodian,
Yeah, yeah,
and we
yeah.
called one of his. I think it was the last album was Let Your Weirdness Carry You Home. And
Well,
yeah,
Stevie would have been of the Cellar end of that era, and then Andy McGibbon, from Bonneville, so Andy
yeah,
would have went to the Cellar and stuff like that.
yeah.
But they'd have been younger than me, and Johnny Kerr and Johnny McCarroll played in bands, Ever So, and a bunch of bands, Terry Dines and all. There was a bunch of kids that played music,
Yeah.
that went on to play music. Not too many girls, unfortunately. There was a couple of girls that were interested in music, but it was still very, male centric, that whole scene.
But those bonds, say a lot of those bonds are, they're flying. They're still doing well, and say it all comes from the same kind of group and extended friendships and stuff like that. There, and there's fellas still producing music, and Lurgan's got has had a great folk scene for maybe 40, 50 years, but
Oh, it's
it's
brilliant.
it's interesting too. There's even crossover with that. Like I done an interview with what do you call it, Tucker Diablo recently. There,
Yeah, that's a Hart Brothers, isn't it?
what's that?
That's Hart Brothers.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I know Kevin quite well.
yeah. What do you call it? Was Tom? It was Tom Hart, and
Yes, of course, yes,
what do you
yes.
call it? But he was saying that he would have played folk, he would have played trad music in his early days and stuff like that there. So
Yeah,
it's always crossed over, and there's always been a huge music tradition in Lurgan,
yeah,
but and it's not like I play folk music, so I don't like that type of music, or or you say there's
yeah.
there's an accept, there's a love of music across the different genres, and you know, people have played one type of music and have moved into another genre, but they don't just leave behind what they played before and stuff like that there. So,
Yeah.
and like for a small town, I would argue it has produced more than its fair share of top musicians. You know, going even there, you know, Emer McGill, who I interviewed recently, she's a top
Yeah.
flautist. You
And
know, she's a concert flautist.
Conleth Kane as well.
Conleth, yep, you know,
Yeah.
and
Do you know, it's great to see just anybody coming from, like, you know, and Connor Mitchell as well, who's like doing great stuff in the Lyric and various other places. Like,
Kieran Lavery, obviously from, you know,
yes,
Captain
Kieran,
Catholic.
obviously. There's
Yep,
like, you know, that's a great thing. We could keep pulling these names. Like,
yep,
it was always very sort of important to me where we were from. Because it wasn't sort of like everybody was at it, it made us very resolute. We mightn't have been good or, you know, popular or any of these things, but it didn't really matter. It was the fun. It was like, it was in us. And you didn't have to scratch the surface too hard in Lurgan to find, and Craigavon to find musicians. Like, I mean, I played pickup bands when I wasn't doing anything in the late 90s, you know, just with lads, James Ledley and me and Phil McAvoy just played around bars in town, you know, doing, you know, Britpop covers, like, you know, just for the crack.
yep,
You know, it's just doing that, playing. So it's just
yep,
a lovely, lovely thing, you know.
yep. No, it's brilliant. You know, it's even there within the folk scene, um, it's very accepting. You know, within Lurgan that, you know, I've seen different folk scenes maybe in other towns where it's like, that's you know, it's can't
Yeah,
play
yeah.
that, or you know what I mean. And like I remember a girl coming into, she was in, there was a session in JP's on the what do you call, whatever it says. She's a great singer. Oh, bring her in for a song, and she was, ah, you wouldn't know what I would sing. What do you like to sing? She
Yeah.
goes, do you know any Erasure? So she starts singing, give a little respect, right? And
Yep.
and the banjo player was straight in, the mandolin player was straight in,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
flute was going, everything was flying, the boron was going, give a little respect, and
Yep.
she couldn't believe it. She couldn't believe, you know what I mean? And
Fantastic.
I would say
Absolutely fantastic.
that's not going to happen in any session anywhere else. You know what I mean? You know, music's music, like, you know what I mean. So
Yeah.
what I call it. And I remember even there, or even just, you mentioned a couple of lads from Pine Bank, and the Erasures, obviously, you know, Andy Bell was always openly gay, and you know, and was brave about that, in the
And Vince
time,
Clark.
and you know, yeah, and in the times whenever it wasn't kind of acceptable, or you know, wasn't accepted, or it was a
Yeah.
hard thing to do, you know what I mean? And it's still a hard thing to do as well, you know, obviously as well in this wee place sometimes, but
Yeah.
there would have been like, you know, 14 of us, maybe I thought maybe we're tough lads away down to see Erasure in the King's Hall, you
I always remember that, and everyone. I remember speaking to friends about it in the 80s, and they're like, "Well, you do know? Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Don't give a damn. The music's fantastic. Like, you know,
yeah,
the idea of the sexuality of an artist or anybody else
yeah,
being anything. I
yeah,
can't remember. I, I don't in the 90s. I remember in the cellar.
yeah,
Uh, there was that wasn't tolerated. I remember in that club we had like we did have this thing that we didn't tolerate any intolerance towards anyone else, especially if they were like gay or bi or whatever the hell we were into,
and
like, you know.
I can remember that as well, Joe. You know what I mean?
Because like
Yeah,
everywhere else that happened, like it was like, right, let's not do that.
yeah,
That's just, who cares? It's like
yep,
there's much more important things, and especially I think our generations that were born in like the late 60s, early 70s, and experienced a quite singular childhood. Like, um, these things became a lot less important. These, you know, positions of like, you know, anger became a lot less important, and like, what's, it's useless waste of energy. Like,
yep.
but it is still difficult. You know, I think if you're anyway
But
different.
it showed you the power of music. You know, it's like prevailing
Yeah.
attitude would have been homophobic and so on, but because the music was so good, you know, lads who maybe here grown up in that environment and whatever, just went, no, I don't think so. You know, we're not having that.
Yeah.
You know, and but there was a
Pop
funny
songs are
there was a funny story about it as well. Joe was Martin O'Neill, I think Martin had been down in Smithfield, and Wham had split up, right? You know, Wham, like, right? Right? So there's these, so Wham t-shirts were like down to like £1 or something like that there in, you know, Smithfield. So I
yeah.
think Martin seen a bit of an opportunity, and he bought 4 Wham t-shirts, right? And he sold them to the fellas at Tully shops, you know, for the lads, you know, the lads he sat on the wall, you know,
Yeah.
with a buckfast, whatever, right? he told them, his lads, these are shit hot, like, you know, these are fucking, there was Wham, it's like, look, just they're stylish fuck, like, you know, so he sold it for them. So it goes down to us. We were about, I don't know, suppose we were about 14 or something. As we see us here. We're the hard lads, you know, and the Tully Gully shops all in the Wham.
Oh,
so sorry that I couldn't resist.
See the sites. Even before, there used to be mod shoes that fellas wore. Do you remember like the Badger shoes?
Yeah.
There was green, white, and orange ones, and I still laugh when I see them, like those horrible shoes. Like, and the only place I ever saw any, there are 2 places. I saw them in West Belfast and Tully Gully shops, and it was just like the guy wasn't even a mod, you know. They were just on sale. It was just ridiculous. Like, you know,
where did he get them?
What's
wrong with them? What's wrong with them, Joe?
Yeah.
But no, we're cutting it. I'm sorry, I'm cutting into this time. I knew this was going to happen. I knew this was just going to turn into a bit of crack it, whatever. But
yeah,
look, we're kind of only about 5 minutes left, you know, and so I just want to pay a tribute to you, as you know, as a guy that from the start, you know, always went his own way, always done his own thing, and didn't follow the crowd, and played music, and as you said, didn't really care so much where that took him, sort of financially or anything got there. But you create the space for people to create, follow you, and play their own music, and you know, you've created your own fantastic music with Documenta Drone Pop, and Documenta is you're playing in the Black Box soon, Joe, as well.
Yeah, fingers crossed. Saturday the 27th of November, we're playing support to our good friends from Cork, the Altered Hours, whose new albums just came out today, and I'm really looking forward to it because we have not many shows left. Because we've just finished our last record, so I'm very excited to let you all hear.
Yeah.
It's very centered on Craigavon, growing up in Craigavon, and it so far seems it's going to be okay. I think it's hard to judge after a while, but we're going to get to play some of the new songs. So I'm looking forward to playing. I've missed it. It's been it'll be 22 months since our last show, which is the longest I have ever not played music or even just consumed music. It's quite, you know, since I was 13, I've been going to shows. And this is the longest I've went without music since I was 13, which is heartbreaking, to be honest. So fingers crossed, you know, we'll get back onto the horse and make a loud noise. We're hopefully going to try and play down sort of Lurgan or Craigavon at one point, because the rest of the band want to play there.
Yeah.
I don't. And they take the mickey out of me so much. I mean, it's like I'm just a butt to their jokes constantly. Like, well, so they want to play in Craigavon.
If you ever come to play in Craigavon or Lurgan, you know, the grapevine will be backing you to the hilt. And
Oh yeah, well, no, we'll definitely do it. But I really want to do it. Like next year, next summertime, we just will go down and play a show for the crack. It'll be
can
great
you
crack. Like
imagine?
we'll
Can
have
you
nights,
imagine?
like, you know.
Can you imagine the type of gig, like if a few of the bands from Lurgan, the established bands from Lurgan, got a gig on the likes of the Bonavilles and Melodian and yourselves, you know,
Totally, like
be some gig, wouldn't it?
definitely, definitely, would definitely do it. Like definitely make it happen. Like I'd say next summer. It should be something that we should look towards, like, you know, especially with Craigavon being forwarded as a place of culture.
Yeah.
At
Craigavon City
last,
culture.
yes, brilliant.
But it has produced, it has produced, it has produced a lot of culture, maybe not Highbury
Yeah,
or whatever is thinks
maybe not
Highbury
highbrow,
culture, but
but we do also have like a young lady called Hannah Peel who grew up in Drumgore, and
right?
she's very fond of her like Craigavon past as well, like, you know.
Yeah,
So you know, it does have a special place, I find, you know, mainly because of its weirdness.
yeah.
Just Craigavon, the existence of it, and us all being products of it. I think it.
Craigavon Henge has to happen, or Craig, I don't know, well, Craigavon Barry. There's already
Well,
Glasgow Barry in there.
no, let's not go Barry. You know, we can find something. We can think on that. There, I wouldn't come up with a name just on the hoof. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
Craigavon's a terrible name, like, so we can have something really good. Let's think about it.
Let's have a think about it too. Let's make it happen. Get all the
Let's
top
make it
bands.
happen. Yes, definitely, Gordy. Definitely.
So
I have a lot of
we're gonna have to wrap you up here, Joe, because I've got 1 minute left on this Zoom. Absolutely
brilliant.
brilliant talking to you. But we'll have to do it again when we're promoting this festival at the
Yes.
lakes.
Yeah. Bloody right. The Lakes. Yes, that would be a great place to do it.